How We Know We're Alive is not a horror game. It's more of a cozy mystery. And for the short hour I played it, I was completely immersed in its tale. The music and warm sunset of the opening screen instantly gave me Life is Strange vibes. And that nostalgic but melancholic feeling is reminiscent of cozy horror in a way. This is a story of guilt and grief, of loss and our unshakable need to make sense of a world beyond our control. And I don't know about you, but introspection can be a very scary thing. So this is your spoiler warning as we dive into the story of How We Know We're Alive, created by Motvin Studios. So sit back, get cozy, and let the nightmare begin. In the stillness of the night, a bus travels along a road with dense forest on either side. The trip from Stockholm to Harunga isn't terribly long, yet it's taken Sara 10 years to return to the small industrial town she grew up in. Along the way, we see a mostly one-sided conversation between Sara and her once best friend, Maria. "What are you up to? Give me news. It's been a while. How are you?" The messages from Maria pour in, but Sara only manages to reply, "Sorry, just totally swamped at the office these days. Let's speak soon." Maria continues, asking Sara multiple times for a chance to meet and catch up with one another. There's something that she really wants to talk to Sara about, something important. But again, Sara is too busy at the office to respond, putting Maria off until the following week. The bus arrives in the town center and Sara exits, umbrella in hand, as she walks toward the flower shop. She reminisces about her life in Harunga before she moved away, of how she and Maria could trick people at the petrol station into buying them beer when they were underage. She remembers Maria's pineapple and barbecue sauce pizza order as she passes by Pizza Verona. Every shop, house, and car is another memory of her time with Maria. When she finally reaches the flower shop, she's greeted by Elsa, the elderly lady who owns it. Elsa can hardly believe that it's been 10 years since Sara left town. But today, it's the 12th, isn't it? A year already since it happened. Sara buys a bouquet of flowers and continues toward her destination, a large church on the edge of town. She remembers sitting in the pews during graduation, promising herself that it would be the last of the hundreds of hours she spent in there. "We'd really been looking forward to it," she says as she walks past toward the cemetery. Maria Berg, 1992 to 2019. The epitaph readable from the glow of candles placed around the headstone. "And there are still so many paths I haven't trodden," it reads. Maria died a year ago at the age of 27, but how, we don't yet know. What we do realize, however, is that the text messages we saw in the beginning were over a year old, before Maria's death. And now that she's gone, Sara wants to talk to her, but she doesn't know what to say. She tells Maria she misses her and that she's sorry she wasn't at the funeral. It was just too hard to face. But why? Why didn't Maria try to leave? Sara says that Maria should have come with her, that she wouldn't be dead if she had just followed their plan from the beginning. Sara thinks back to just before graduation. They're in Maria's room together, and Sara is excited to book the tickets to Stockholm, where they'll start their new lives as writers. But Maria has news. She's pregnant. Sara immediately begins to make plans for Maria, telling her that they can make an appointment to schedule an abortion. But Maria tells her she doesn't want that. She wants to keep her baby. It's what she and Jacob, the baby's father, want to do, and she's really excited about it. But Sara thinks Maria is lying. She's not really happy. She can't be. It's her Jesus freak parents that are making her keep the baby. She just can't have a baby because it'll ruin her chances of going to Stockholm. Maria tells Sara that she's not listening to her, and she's not going to Stockholm. Sara leaves angry because Maria is staying behind in Harunga. She blindsided her with this news days before they were supposed to leave for good. Their friendship dwindled then, even though Maria tried to rekindle it time and time again. But that text the night before she died, what was it that she wanted to tell Sara that was so important? And why had Maria been out driving on that road at night? It all seemed so mysterious and strange. It doesn't seem like an accident to Sara. Suddenly, another woman walks into the cemetery. It's Lena, Maria's sister, come to pay her respects on the anniversary of her death. She's surprised to see Sara here, since she didn't even go to Maria's funeral last year, and we can see her animosity towards Sara in the dialogue, the sarcasm in her words as she mentions life being too busy to check in on dear friends. Sara is uncomfortable but tries to learn more about Maria and her life in Harunga. She asks Lena if she has seen Maria's family recently, her husband Jacob and their son Johannes. Then she wonders about the epitaph, that line, and there are still so many paths I haven't trodden. Where had it come from? Lena tells her it's from a poem that Maria wrote. She never gave up on writing even after deciding to stay in Harunga. She even turned her old bedroom into a study and joined the writing group that a woman named Gunnel started, a woman that Sara doesn't seem too happy to remember. Yes, Maria carried on, being a mother and attending church. Church, Sara interrupts. There are a variety of options to choose when speaking with Lena, and from these choices we continue to see that Sara has an issue with religion and people within the town. Instead, she tells Lena that she wasn't aware Maria was religious, and Lena doesn't think that she was either, not really. She just liked the church. Lena would like to spend some alone time at her sister's grave, so Sara leaves, but before muttering how bitchy she thought Lena was. Then she remembers that Maria and Lena's mother also passed away not too long ago. Lena never liked her anyways, she surmises. She always blames Sara when Maria got into trouble. But what happened to her? What did this town do to you? She wonders. Now dedicated to solving this mystery, Sara sets off to find Gunnel, the founder of the writing club. Heading toward the supermarket where Gunnel still works, Sara runs into Philippe, her old teacher, who realizes why Sara is back in town. We learn that he and Maria became good friends after her graduation, and on the outside looking in, it seems rather suspicious, doesn't it? A teacher befriending his younger classmate after graduation. Philippe even teaches her son Johannes now, and he asks Sara if she'd like to catch up more and watch the game with him later at the bar, if she's free. Strangeness aside, he also tells Sara that her old nemesis, Officer Nilsson, was the first person at the scene of Maria's crash. He also comments that losing her life was a waste of potential and questions if Sara, like Maria, also kept the writing dream alive. Sara wonders if Philippe saw what she sees, that Maria had another life that she wanted to live. One where she was a writer in Stockholm and not a church-going mother in Harunga. At the ICA, Sara finds Gunnel behind the counter, and she's quite the gossip. Sara inquires about Maria and her involvement in the writing group, and Gunnel comments that Maria used to write dreary, awful things, mostly about death. The week before she died, however, Maria didn't attend the writing group for some reason. Gunnel says that a man claimed to have seen Maria around town that week, and she was all out of sorts and very distracted by something, based on his account. Getting all the details from Gunnel, Sara then makes her way toward the police station to speak with Officer Nilsson. And aside from the teacher and Jacob, Maria's husband, everyone has a problem with Sara, and the feeling is apparently mutual. Nilsson comments about Sara's delinquent childhood when she shoplifted at age 14. Sara tells him that was all in the past, but once a thief, always a thief, he says. He even talks down about Maria for a moment, saying that since she's dead, at least she can't be up to her old tricks. But he was the first one at the scene of her crash, so Sara needs his information. Nilsson tells her that Maria was on the South Main Road about an hour down, a road that leads to Stockholm. Sara wonders why Maria would have been on that road of all places, but Nilsson doesn't have a clue. He theorizes that Maria hit a branch in the road, skidded off to the side, and crashed into the rocks below. Sara and Nilsson exchange goodbyes, leaving Sara to wonder why Maria was on that road in the first place. She decides to talk to Jacob, hoping to get a look into Maria's old study for clues. She enters Maria's house, which used to belong to her parents, the house that Jacob and their son now reside in alone. Jacob greets her at the door, and the exchange isn't as hostile as her previous encounters, but awkward nonetheless. He leaves to make her a cup of coffee, and Johannes enters the dining room. We learn that in all the time that Sara's been away, she's only met Johannes once, when he was still a baby. Now a fourth grader, he runs off to find his dad, and Jacob returns, unfortunately, out of coffee. The anniversary of Maria's death has been hard for them both, but they're doing as well as can be expected, using hockey as a distraction. Sara asked to see Maria's study and ascends the stairs, knowing its location after having visited so much before when they were younger. The room hasn't changed at all since then. Sara read a title on Maria's bookshelf and thinks about how she was always trying to get her to read her favorite books, but Sara never did. She then reads some of Maria's writing, with one passage saying, "How long a road must lie ahead between the light and me." Is this another clue? Is Maria referencing the night on the road, the light a metaphor for her death? Sara wonders this as she spots a photo and thinks back to another memory of them both. They're sitting on a busted car overlooking the town. Beer in hand, the girls talk, Maria commenting how small the town looks from up high, and how much she'll miss the forest once they leave. Sara tells her that there are plenty of forests in Stockholm, not that they'll have the time though. They'll be too busy with literary festivals and parties. "You're going to love it," she tells Maria. And it seems that she's had their future planned out for a while now, and that plan doesn't involve Maria's love life. She asks her how her moped guy is, referring to Jacob, refusing to remember or use his real name. "You think he's stupid," Maria tells Sara. "I know how you think, but it's okay. You just happen to be wrong about him, is all." Leaving this shithole can't come soon enough, Sara tells Maria, after asking her how long she's been with Jacob, and we learn that they've been together for 11 months. The memory fades and we're back in the study. Under the bed, Sara finds a receipt from the liquor store for 2 large bottles of vodka. The receipt is from the day Maria died. But she used to hate vodka. Why would she? Sara begins to see a bigger picture now, the clues from the night starting to weave themselves together into a story. She meets Jacob downstairs and asks him where he and his son were on the night Maria died. They were at a hockey game, a game that Maria had gotten them tickets for. She usually joins them, but this time she wanted it to be special, a father-son treat just for the two of them. Sara leaves and finds Elsa, the flower shop owner. Her shop is near the liquor store, and Sara wonders if she happened to see Maria on the day she died. Elsa did, remembering that she had a funny, sneaky look about her as she carried 2 large bottles out of the liquor store. Elsa suggests that because of this, and because Maria refused to tell her what all the vodka was for, that Maria must have been an alcoholic. Though this is the first time Elsa's ever seen her shopping there, but okay. Deciding that Lena, Maria's sister, must know what she's discovered, Sara makes her way back to the cemetery, but runs into Philippe one last time at the bar. She decides to interrogate him as well, asking where he was the night Maria died. Philippe is surprised but realizes that, of course, Sara wouldn't know. She wasn't a part of Maria's inner circle anymore. He had been at Maria's house that night with Jacob, Johannes, and some of her other friends. Maria had asked them all to arrive there previously, so everyone gathered at her house around 7. She wouldn't tell them why beforehand, just that everything would be revealed after they arrived. But Maria never showed. Instead, Officer Nilsson arrived at the front door with news of her death. It was terrible to hear the news, but in a way, them being together was a blessing, almost as if it was planned from the start. It was almost as if she knew, Philippe says to Sara. Her mind reeling with this new information, she wonders why nobody in town stopped Maria. She could have helped her. But what can she do now? Sara decides that people deserve to know the truth, no matter how painful it is to hear. Finding Lena, she begins to tell her everything. Maria's life had become terrible. Getting pregnant all those years ago trapped her in this town and stifled her dreams. Her dreams of getting out, becoming a writer, and seeing the world. She spiraled deeper down into the dark, into a horrible place that nobody saw, even though she wrote about death and darkness all the time in her poetry. I should have been there for her, but I wasn't, Sara says. Nobody was. She got blind drunk and drove herself off the road, ending her life on purpose. The truth finally out in the open. Lena is silent for a moment, then tells Sara to calm down. She wants to show her something. Together, they enter the church and walk the aisles to the front. There's a large portrait of Maria surrounded by candles and flowers. An evensong service is going to be held here tonight in her memory, Lena tells Sara. Look around you at all these candles people have lit. The flowers, the letters, the pictures of her. Did you think she wasn't loved? She is missed and mourned every day by the countless people here that you never bothered to get to know. You think that after you left that she just ground to a halt? That her life could only be small and sad by comparison to yours? Sara tries to explain the evidence, but Lena refuses. This is real life, Sara. Real life in which my beautiful baby sister died in a car accident. But what about the party, the vodka, and all those dark poems she was writing? Sara exclaims. And it's here that Lena decides to reveal the actual truth to Sara. Maria had been working on a book. She had sent samples to an agent and they wanted to work with her, so the alcohol was for the party, and the party was to share her good news with her family and friends. And if you recall from the text messages in the beginning, she wanted to share something important with Sara, too. She was on the road to Stockholm because she wanted to find Sara, to share her news about the book with her. Maria had planned to find Sara, then return just before the party, but she never made it. Lena didn't want to share this with Sara at first because it was upsetting, and she didn't feel that Sara deserved to know any more about Maria's life. Many things in her life were wonderful, Lena tells Sara, but you hated this place too much to find that out. You thought it was impossible that living here and having a family could make someone happy. But you saw what you wanted to see. Confirmation that you chose the right path and she didn't. Lena tells her that the service will be starting soon and it's best if she leaves. Sara apologizes to her and leaves the church, the rain finally stopping outside. She returns to Maria's grave. She can't excuse herself. She speaks to Maria, and it hurts because if Maria was there, Sara knows that she would forgive her for all of her selfishness and stupidity. Realizing that Lena was right and that she really didn't know Maria at all, Sara says that if she had been there for Maria, then she might still be here. She apologizes, telling Maria she loves her, and congratulates her on the book, before walking beyond the cemetery and climbing up the hill that overlooks the town below. There, she climbs onto the same busted car from her memory, only this time, alone. She stares out at Harunga, at the place and people she despised so much, the place and people that Maria loved, the place she'll remain forever. This game does a wonderful job of putting the player into Sara's mindset and frame of reference. She's depicted as a character who lacks self-awareness regarding her controlling behavior towards Maria. She had their entire future planned out for them both, saw Maria's love interest and family as an inconvenience. We even see complimentary projection from Sara onto Maria, as she incorrectly believes that Maria holds the same negative views of the town, its people, and their religion as she does. Throughout the game, Sara makes decisions for Maria without genuinely understanding or valuing her friend's perspective. This behavior highlights Sara's disregard for Maria's autonomy and suggests a lack of genuine care for Maria's individuality, thoughts, and feelings. Overall, Sara seems to lack empathy and fails to establish meaningful connections with those around her. Lena tells her in the end that she only saw what she wanted to see, and I think I did too at first. The developers place red herrings throughout, cultivating suspicion about the characters that Sara disliked. The creepy man who owns a fruit truck, the incompetent Officer Nilsson, and Jacob, who Sara feels took Maria away from her. Even the dialogue between Sara and Philippe about his student-teacher relationship with Maria deliberately steers the player towards seeing suspects instead of the answers right in front of us. We're playing detective, just like Sara. Maybe because we felt this way before too. Oftentimes grief accompanies guilt. We dwell on what we could have done differently, thinking that maybe different choices would have resulted in different outcomes for those we love. For Sara, I believe her guilt over being a bad friend to Maria started before her trip to Harunga. I believe it started shortly after learning about Maria's death, after not taking the time to write back to her more often. So we find ourselves whisked away into Sara's version of events, her guilt compelling her to set things right, if you will, by solving what happened to Maria. She needs to complete this task as a way to forgive herself. And as Lena said, perhaps she wanted to prove that leaving Harunga was the right choice. That Maria was wrong and she was right, because that would mean that her death wasn't Sara's fault in her mind. But Sara is a writer with a creative imagination. Coming up with wild scenarios from bits of nothing is kind of her forte. The circumstantial evidence does make a compelling case, but only because we're seeing these clues through Sara's perspective. And guilt sometimes leads us to blame others, anyone but ourselves. But the problem with guilt is that it causes us to dwell on things we can't change. Sure, Sara could have made more of an effort to connect with Maria. She could have even moved back to Harunga to be with her friend. She had a job in copywriting, technically living her dream. But it was clear from many of the dialogue options that Sara wasn't truly happy there, and I'm sure she had a lot of internal struggles as well as a result. She could have done things differently, yes, but it still doesn't mean that Maria would have lived. She could have died days, months, or even years later from some unforeseen circumstance. We are all flawed and we make mistakes, but reflecting on these tragic experiences allows us to look inward to see if there's something we've learned about ourselves that we can change or add to our lives. Sara can choose to honor Maria's legacy by becoming a better person and friend to others moving forward. At the gravesite, she's seeking Maria's forgiveness, but she's the one who has to forgive herself. This game is a lesson in taking a step back and realizing what's important to us while we still have time. But it's also about making sense of our grief and guilt and moving forward. Thank you so much for watching this video. Here's another one of my videos. Sleep tight, and may your nightmares be strangely cozy.